At the coldest point of the last ice age, most of the human species was gone, not endangered, not struggling, nearly extinct. Some genetic studies estimate the entire breeding population of Homo sapiens dropped to somewhere in the low thousands, squeezed into a handful of pockets on a frozen planet, while ice sheets a mile thick buried everything from Canada to northern Europe. And yet here you are, which means somewhere in that frozen bottleneck, a small number of people didn't just survive, they held on long enough to become every single person who has ever lived since. So the question isn't just how did ancient humans survive the Ice Age, it's how did we almost not make it, and what did the ones who did make it actually do differently? The answer isn't about being tough, it's about being specific. Here's the assumption most people carry around without questioning it, that the Ice Age was one long uniform stretch of brutal cold that ancient humans simply endured for thousands of years. That's not quite right. The period scientists call the last glacial maximum peaked around 20,000 years ago, and geologist Peter Clark, whose 2009 research in the journal Science mapped the extent of the ice sheets in detail, showed just how uneven this world actually was. Huge areas of North America, Northern Europe, and Asia were genuinely uninhabitable, buried under ice sheets that in places were over a mile thick. But other regions further south stayed relatively mild, not warm, just survivable. This matters enormously because it means the ancient humans weren't fighting the Ice Age everywhere at once. They were retreating into the handful of places on Earth where it was still barely possible to live. In 2007, archaeologist Curtis Morayan and his team published a discovery in the journal Nature that reframed how scientists think about this entire period. Excavating a cave system called Pinnacle Point on the southern coast of South Africa, they found evidence that early humans were living there through some of the harshest climate swings in our species' history, surviving not by battling the cold head-on, but by finding one of the few environments on the planet that stayed reliably resource-rich. The coastline gave them shellfish, a steady, weatherproof food source that didn't disappear during droughts or freezes the way land animals and plants did. Marian's research suggests that a shockingly small number of these coastal refugees may be the reason our species survived some of the most brutal climate periods in its history at all. In other words, most of the map was closed. Humanity survived in a handful of rooms, not the whole house. Survivable pockets of land only get you so far, especially once humans started pushing north into genuinely freezing territory. And that raises an obvious question. How do you survive temperatures your body was never built for, with no synthetic materials, no factories, nothing but what you can kill or gather? The answer is more precise than they wore fur. Archaeologist Olga Sofer, who has spent decades studying Upper Paleolithic technology, points to a specific and almost overlooked invention, the sewing needle. A bone needle with a tiny-eyed hole discovered in Siberia's Denisova cave and dated to roughly 50,000 years ago marks a turning point that's easy to miss if you're not looking for it. Loose animal hides draped over the body keep you warmer than nothing, but they're leaky. Wind gets in, heat gets out. A needle means fitted clothing, layered clothing, seams that actually seal against the cold. Sofer's research argues that this single technological shift, the ability to tailor clothing rather than just drape it, may have been one of the most important survival technologies our species ever developed, and it's also one of the least visible in the archaeological record. Houses built entirely out of mammoth bones. At a site called Measureich, dated to roughly 15,000 years ago, researchers found the remains of dwellings constructed from dozens of mammoth skulls, jaws, and leg bones stacked and arranged with clear architectural intent, then likely covered with hides for insulation. In a landscape with no trees for wood, ancient humans didn't just adapt to the absence of a resource, using the skeleton of one of the most dangerous animals on the continent as a building material. They replaced it entirely. This wasn't a lucky improvisation. Building a structure like this took planning, cooperation, and almost certainly repeated hunts targeting the same massive animal over time.